My accident was the best thing that ever happened to me. The truck hit me at 43 miles per hour while I was crossing Madison Street on my way to work. I remember the screech of brakes, the sickeningly hollow thud of metal against my body, and then nothing. When I woke up 3 days later in the ICU, my fiancée, Vanessa, was sitting beside my bed crying, but they weren't tears of relief. She was on the phone with someone, her voice low and urgent. "I don't know what to do now," she whispered. "The insurance payout won't happen if he survives." I kept my eyes closed and listened. My entire left side was screaming with pain from the impact, but I forced myself to stay perfectly still. Vanessa continued talking to whoever was on the other end. "We planned this for 6 months. You said the truck would kill him instantly. Now he's going to wake up and everything's ruined." My brain struggled to process what I was hearing through the fog of painkillers. "We planned this. The truck. Kill him instantly." She'd arranged for someone to hit me with a truck. My own fiancé had tried to murder me for insurance money. I'd taken out a $2 million life insurance policy 3 months ago at Vanessa's insistence. She'd said it was responsible planning since we were getting married. She'd helped me fill out the paperwork, picked the beneficiary designations, even paid the first premium as an early wedding gift. I'd thought it was thoughtful. She'd been planning my death. The hospital room door opened and I heard footsteps. A man's voice I didn't recognize spoke quietly. "Is he still out?" Vanessa responded. "Yeah. The doctors said he might not wake up for another day or two. We need to figure out what to do, Cole. If he wakes up and remembers anything, we're finished." Cole. I knew that name. Cole Brennan was Vanessa's ex-boyfriend from college. She'd told me they'd dated briefly and stayed friends. She'd even invited him to our wedding. I'd met him twice at dinner parties and thought he seemed nice. Apparently, he was nice enough to help her commit insurance fraud and murder. My heart monitor started beeping faster as my pulse spiked with rage and fear. Vanessa gasped. "Shit! Is he waking up? We need to leave. We can't be here when he opens his eyes." They rushed out of the room and I heard their footsteps fade down the hallway. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing despite the drugs making everything feel slow and distant. Vanessa had tried to kill me. She'd hired someone to run me down in the street like an animal, and now I was lying in a hospital bed with multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a concussion while she was out there planning her next move. A nurse came in to check my vitals and noticed I was awake. She smiled with genuine relief and pressed the call button. "Welcome back, Mr. Sutton. You had us worried. How are you feeling?" Like I'd been hit by a truck that my fiancé paid for, I thought. But I said, "Everything hurts. Where's Vanessa?" "My fiancé?" The nurse's smile faltered slightly. "She was here earlier but stepped out. I'm sure she'll be back soon. Let me get the doctor." Over the next hour, doctors and nurses paraded through my room running tests and asking questions. Did I remember what happened? Could I move my toes? Did I know what day it was? I answered everything mechanically while my brain worked on the real problem. How was I going to prove what Vanessa had done? And more importantly, how was I going to protect myself from whatever she'd try next? Dr. Gaines, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, sat on the edge of my bed and went through my injuries in detail. Fractured pelvis, broken left femur, 3 cracked ribs, ruptured spleen that they'd had to remove, severe concussion, and extensive soft tissue damage. I'd need multiple surgeries and months of physical therapy. I might never walk without a limp. The truck driver had fled the scene, and police were still looking for him. When Dr. Gaines left, I asked the nurse if I could have my phone. She found it in the bag of personal belongings they'd collected at the accident scene. The screen was shattered, but it still turned on. I immediately opened my banking app and felt my stomach drop. Vanessa had access to our joint checking account. She'd withdrawn $47,000. Everything we'd saved for the wedding, the down payment on our house, my emergency fund, gone. My hand shook as I checked my individual savings account. She didn't have access to that one, and the money was still there. $18,000. Not enough to rebuild my life, but enough to hire a lawyer. I needed to document everything before the painkillers made me forget details. I opened my phone's notes app and started typing with my good hand. Vanessa's call. Said insurance payout won't happen if I survive. Mentioned planning for 6 months. Cole Brennan involved. Withdrew $47K from joint account. Truck driver fled scene. I saved the note and then did something that felt paranoid but necessary. I emailed it to myself and to my brother Quinn with the subject line, "Open if something happens to me." Quinn lived in Seattle and we weren't particularly close, but he was the only family I had left after our parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. If Vanessa was desperate enough to try again, at least someone would know the truth. Vanessa returned an hour later with coffee and a concerned expression that would have fooled me completely if I hadn't heard her phone call. She rushed to my bedside and grabbed my hand. "Oh my God, you're awake. The nurse just told me. I've been so worried." I looked at her face. The same face I'd kissed goodbye the morning of the accident. The same woman I'd proposed to on a beach in North Carolina. The same person who'd helped me pick out paint colors for our future house. And she'd tried to have me killed. I kept my voice weak and confused. What happened? I remember walking to work and then nothing. Vanessa squeezed my hand tighter. "You were hit by a truck. A hit and run. The police are looking for the driver." She delivered the lie smoothly, her eyes welling with tears. I thought I'd lost you. The performance was impressive. If I hadn't heard her on the phone, I would have believed every word. I let my eyes close like I was exhausted and mumbled, I'm so tired. Can you stay? Vanessa promised she would, and settled into the chair beside my bed. I drifted in and out of sleep over the next few hours, always aware of her presence. She spent most of the time on her phone, typing rapidly, probably coordinating with Cole about their next move. When night came and visiting hours ended, Vanessa kissed my forehead and promised to return first thing in the morning. The moment she left, I called my brother. Quinn answered on the fourth ring, his voice groggy. It's 2 a.m. here, man. What's wrong? I explained everything. The accident, Vanessa's phone call, Cole Brennan, the stolen money. Quinn was silent for a long moment before he spoke. Jesus Christ. You need to call the police right now. I'd been thinking about that. The problem was I had no proof. I'd been barely conscious and drugged when I overheard Vanessa's conversation. No recordings, no witnesses, nothing that would stand up in court. If I went to the police now, Vanessa would know I'd heard her and she'd either disappear or come up with a story I couldn't disprove. Quinn understood the problem. So, what are you going to do? I told him my plan. I'd pretend to remember nothing about the accident or what I'd overheard. I'd act like the devoted fiancé recovering from a terrible tragedy, and while Vanessa thought she was safe, I'd gather evidence. Quinn was quiet again before responding. That's incredibly dangerous. If she tried once, she might try again. I knew that, but the alternative was confronting her without proof and watching her walk away with no consequences. At least this way, I'd have a chance to build a case. Quinn made me promise to call him every day so he'd know I was alive. Then he said something that stuck with me. She showed you who she really is. Don't forget that when she's playing the concerned fiancé role. That's not the real her. The next morning, Vanessa arrived with flowers and my favorite breakfast from the diner near our apartment. She'd even remembered to get extra syrup for the pancakes. The attention to detail made me sick. We sat together while I ate slowly, my ribs protesting with every movement. Vanessa talked about postponing the wedding and finding a ground-floor apartment since I wouldn't be able to handle stairs for months. She was planning our future while secretly hoping I'd die before we got there. A detective came by around noon to ask about the accident. Detective Angela Cross was probably in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She explained they were still looking for the truck driver but had no leads. No witnesses had gotten a plate number, and the area didn't have good security camera coverage. I asked if she thought they'd find whoever did it. Detective Cross hesitated before answering honestly. Hit and runs are difficult to solve without witnesses or vehicle evidence, but we're doing everything we can. After she left, Vanessa commented how terrible it was that the driver just left me there. Her indignation seemed so genuine. I wondered how many times she'd practiced that speech. Over the next week, I underwent 2 surgeries to repair my pelvis and femur. The doctors installed metal plates and screws that would be permanent. Physical therapy started immediately despite the pain. A cheerful therapist named Ramon worked with me twice daily, pushing me to move broken bones that screamed in protest. He kept saying that early mobility would improve my long-term recovery. Between surgeries and therapy, I started documenting everything Vanessa did. I used my phone to record our conversations when she visited. Nothing incriminating came up, but I wanted a record. I also started researching Cole Brennan. His social media profiles showed a struggling personal trainer who'd recently opened his own gym. The business wasn't doing well based on the complaints about missed payments to vendors. He needed money. That gave me the connection. Vanessa had probably promised Cole a cut of the insurance payout in exchange for arranging the hit and run. My brother Quinn called every evening like clockwork. During one call, he mentioned he'd been doing his own research on Vanessa. Did you know she was fired from her last job for falsifying expense reports? I didn't know that. Vanessa had told me she'd left for a better opportunity. Quinn continued. I found the court records. Her employer chose not to press charges in exchange for her resignation. But there's a paper trail. She stole almost $15,000 over 6 months. This was a pattern. Vanessa had a history of stealing money and lying about it. The accident suddenly made more sense. She wasn't just greedy. She was desperate. Quinn's research uncovered something else interesting. Cole Brennan had filed for bankruptcy 8 months ago. His gym was hemorrhaging money and he owed over $100,000 to various creditors. The timeline matched. Vanessa had started pushing for the life insurance policy around the same time Cole's financial situation imploded. 2 weeks after the accident, I was transferred to a rehabilitation facility for intensive physical therapy. Vanessa visited every day for the first few days, then started missing visits. She'd text apologies about work being crazy or errands taking longer than expected. I knew she was probably with Cole. The insurance company sent an investigator to interview me about the accident. Leonard Fisk was ex-law enforcement with a skeptical face that suggested he'd seen every scam in the book. He asked detailed questions about my relationship with Vanessa, our financial situation, and the circumstances leading up to the accident. I answered everything truthfully, except the part about overhearing Vanessa's phone call. I wanted to tell him, but Quinn had convinced me to wait until we had more evidence. Fisk wouldn't pursue a case based on something I'd heard while drugged and barely conscious. After the interview, Fisk mentioned something interesting. We always look closely at recent life insurance policies when accidents happen. Just standard procedure. I'll be in touch if we have additional questions. The insurance company was suspicious. That was good. Maybe they'd uncover something I couldn't. Physical therapy consumed my days. Ramon pushed me harder as my bones started healing. The pain was constant but productive. I could take a few steps with a walker now. Small victories measured in feet instead of miles. One afternoon, Cole Brennan showed up at the facility claiming to be my friend. The front desk called to ask if I wanted a visitor, and I said yes. This was an opportunity. Cole walked into my room with an awkward smile and a fruit basket. "Hey man, Vanessa told me what happened. That's terrible. I wanted to check on you." I thanked him for coming and gestured to the chair beside my bed. Cole sat down and made uncomfortable small talk about the weather and sports. Then he got to the real reason for his visit. "Vanessa's pretty stressed with everything going on. The wedding planning, taking care of you, work. I told her I'd help out however I can." I bet he did. I kept my voice weak and grateful. "That's really good of you. I hate that she has to deal with all this." Cole nodded. "She loves you, man. She talks about you all the time. She's just worried about money with all the medical bills piling up. Insurance doesn't cover everything, you know." There it was. He was fishing to see if I knew about the life insurance policy. I played dumb. "Yeah, it's been expensive, but my health insurance is pretty good. We should be okay." Cole's expression flickered with something I couldn't quite read. Disappointment, maybe. He stayed for another 10 minutes before making an excuse to leave. The visit confirmed what I suspected. Cole was actively involved in monitoring the situation. After he left, I called Quinn and told him about the conversation. Quinn had news too. He'd hired a private investigator in my city to dig into Vanessa and Cole. The investigator, a woman named Iris Chen, had already found something interesting. Vanessa and Cole had been seen together at a hotel 3 times in the past month. They weren't just partners in crime. They were having an affair. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I still loved Vanessa, but because it added another layer of betrayal. She hadn't just tried to kill me for money. She'd been cheating on me while planning my murder. Iris Chen called me directly the next day. She had a professional voice and got straight to business. "Your brother hired me to investigate Vanessa Laurent and Cole Brennan. I've uncovered several connections worth noting. Would you like me to continue surveillance?" I absolutely wanted her to continue. Iris explained her rates, and I authorized payment from my savings account. It would eat through my money quickly, but I needed evidence. Over the next 3 weeks, Iris provided daily reports. Vanessa and Cole met regularly at Cole's apartment. They'd been careful not to be seen together in public, but Iris had photos of Vanessa's car parked outside Cole's building overnight. More importantly, Iris had tracked down the truck driver. His name was Dennis Howell, a former client of Cole's gym who owed him money. Iris had photos of Dennis meeting with Cole 2 days before the accident. The connection was there. Now we needed to prove it. Iris suggested we take everything to the police, but I wanted more. I wanted a confession. Something that would guarantee Vanessa and Cole went to prison. Quinn thought I was being obsessive, but he helped me plan. We needed to make Vanessa think I was getting worse instead of better. I called her one evening from the rehab facility and put on my best scared voice. "The doctors found something on my latest scan. They think there might be complications from the head injury. They want to do more tests." Vanessa's concerns sounded genuine over the phone. "What kind of complications? Should I come down there?" I told her not to worry, that I'd know more after the tests, but I dropped hints that things might be serious, that I might not recover as well as we'd hoped. After I hung up, I called Iris and told her to increase surveillance on Vanessa and Cole. If they thought I was dying, they might get careless. 2 days later, Iris sent me an audio recording. She'd managed to plant a listening device in Cole's apartment and caught a conversation between him and Vanessa. I listened with my headphones on, my hands shaking. Vanessa's voice came through clear. "If he dies from complications, the insurance still pays out, right? I mean, it's all connected to the accident." Cole responded. "I already checked with Dennis. He said the hit was solid. Whatever happens now is just delayed consequences." Vanessa laughed. Actually laughed. "We just need to be patient a little longer. Then we're free." I listened to the recording 3 times before calling Detective Cross. I asked if she could come to the rehab facility for an update. She arrived that evening looking curious. I told her everything. The overheard phone call in the hospital, the stolen money, Cole's involvement, the affair, Dennis Howell's name. I showed her Iris's surveillance photos and played the audio recording. Detective Cross listened without interrupting, taking detailed notes. When I finished, she sat back and exhaled slowly. "This is conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud. We need to move carefully to build a case that will stick." She took copies of everything and said she'd start an official investigation. She warned me not to confront Vanessa or Cole, and to be extremely careful until they made arrests. The next week passed in agonizing slowness. Detective Cross called with updates every few days. They'd brought Dennis Howell in for questioning, and he'd cracked immediately. He confessed to hitting me on purpose after Cole paid him $5,000 and forgave his gym membership debt. Dennis provided text messages between him and Cole discussing the timing and location. That was enough to arrest Cole. They picked him up at his gym, surrounded by his struggling business and unpaid bills. Cole tried to play tough at first, but when detectives showed him Dennis's confession and the text messages, he made a deal. He'd testify against Vanessa in exchange for a reduced sentence. Cole confirmed everything. Vanessa had approached him 6 months ago with the plan. She'd been cheating on me for almost a year and wanted out of the relationship, but didn't want to lose the financial security I provided. The life insurance policy was her solution. She'd get $2 million in freedom. Cole would get $300,000 for arranging everything. Detective Cross wanted to wire me for a conversation with Vanessa before they arrested her, get her confession on tape to seal the case. I agreed immediately. They set it up for the following Saturday. I'd been released from the rehab facility to outpatient therapy, which meant I was back at the apartment I shared with Vanessa. The place that used to feel like home, now, felt like a crime scene. Technicians came to the apartment while Vanessa was at work and installed recording equipment, multiple cameras hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames, audio equipment in every room. They wanted her confession captured from every angle. Detective Cross coached me on what to say. Keep Vanessa talking, get her to explain the plan in detail, make her feel safe so she'd admit everything. That evening, Vanessa came home from work and found me sitting in the living room with a serious expression. The wire was taped to my chest under my shirt, and my heart was pounding so hard I worried she'd hear it. Vanessa immediately looked concerned. What's wrong? Did something happen with the doctors? I told her we needed to talk about our future, about the wedding and the financial pressure we were under. Vanessa sat beside me and took my hand. We'll figure it out together. We always do. I took a deep breath and said the words Detective Cross had coached me to use. I know about the insurance policy, about what you and Cole planned. Vanessa's face went completely blank. For 3 seconds, she didn't move or breathe. Then she stood up abruptly. I don't know what you're talking about. You're confused from all the pain medication. I stayed calm. I heard you on the phone in the hospital. You said the insurance payout wouldn't happen if I survived. You mentioned planning it for 6 months. Vanessa's expression shifted through several emotions before landing on cold calculation. You can't prove anything. You were drugged out of your mind. Nobody will believe you. I pulled out my phone and played Iris's recording of Vanessa and Cole discussing my death. Vanessa's face went white as she heard her own voice laughing about waiting for me to die. She lunged for my phone, but I pulled it away. The police already have copies of everything. Cole confessed. Dennis confessed. It's over, Vanessa. She stood there frozen, her mind clearly racing through options. Then she did something I didn't expect. She started crying and collapsed onto the couch beside me. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. Cole convinced me. He said it would be quick and you wouldn't suffer. I was going to call it off, but everything just spiraled. The confession poured out of her between sobs. How she'd met Cole at the gym a year ago and started the affair. How her financial situation was desperate after being fired and she couldn't afford to leave me. How Cole had suggested the insurance plan, and it seemed like the perfect solution. She admitted to withdrawing the money from our joint account to pay Dennis for the hit. She explained how they'd chosen that specific intersection because the morning traffic pattern would give Dennis cover to flee. Every detail of the conspiracy came out while the hidden cameras recorded everything. I felt nothing but disgust as I watched her cry. These weren't tears of genuine remorse. She was just sorry she'd been caught. Detective Cross and 2 uniformed officers came through the door with perfect timing. They'd been waiting outside and heard everything through their equipment. Vanessa's shock at seeing them was almost comical. She tried to run, but made it exactly 3 steps before an officer caught her. Detective Cross read Vanessa her rights while placing her in handcuffs. Vanessa screamed at me the entire time. You bastard! You set me up! You lying bastard! I watched them take her away and felt a strange emptiness. This woman I'd planned to marry, who I'd trusted with my future, had tried to murder me and was now heading to jail. The apartment felt different after they left. Larger somehow. Or maybe I just felt smaller. Quinn flew out the next day and stayed with me for a week while I dealt with the aftermath. The media picked up the story and it became local news. Fiancé arranged hit and run to collect life insurance. My photo was everywhere, along with Vanessa's mugshot and details about the conspiracy. The insurance company canceled the policy and opened their own investigation. Leonard Fisk called to apologize for not catching it sooner. He said they'd flagged it as suspicious but didn't have enough evidence to deny the claim if I'd died. I'd saved them $2 million by surviving. The district attorney offered plea deals to Dennis and Cole in exchange for their testimony against Vanessa. Dennis got 5 years. Cole got 12. Vanessa went to trial 6 months later and I testified about everything. She was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Sitting in that courtroom and watching the judge hand down her sentence should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt like closing a chapter on the worst period of my life. Physical therapy continued for another 8 months. My limp never fully went away, but I could walk without assistance. Ramon said I'd made remarkable progress considering the severity of my injuries. I'd never run again, but I could live a normal life. The joint bank account money was never recovered. Vanessa had spent most of it paying Dennis and Cole, and the rest had gone to lawyers. My savings account was depleted from hiring Iris and covering medical expenses my insurance didn't pay for. I was broke, injured, and starting over at 33 years old. Quinn helped me move out of the apartment I'd shared with Vanessa. Every piece of furniture held memories I didn't want anymore. I sold everything and moved into a smaller place across town. My brother stayed with me for a month while I adjusted to living alone. The insurance company sent me a letter 3 months after Vanessa's conviction. They'd completed their investigation and determined I'd acted in good faith. As a gesture of goodwill for the trauma they'd inadvertently put me through by issuing the policy that motivated my attempted murder, they were offering a settlement of $50,000. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was enough to rebuild. I used part of it to pay Quinn back for hiring Iris. I put the rest in savings and started looking for work. My old job had fired me when I couldn't return after 6 months of recovery. They'd been sympathetic but ultimately needed someone reliable. I understood. Finding work with a limp and a 6-month gap in employment history wasn't easy. I applied for dozens of positions and heard nothing back. The local news coverage meant people recognized my name and face. Some employers probably saw me as damaged goods or too much drama. I was applying for a security position at a mall when I got a call from a law firm. The receptionist asked if I was the James Sutton from the Vanessa Laurent case. My stomach dropped. Here we go again. Someone else who'd seen the news and wanted to gawk, but the receptionist explained that one of their attorneys, Sylvia Park, wanted to speak with me about a job opportunity. I took the meeting out of curiosity. Sylvia Park was probably 50 with silver hair and an intense presence that filled her corner office. She gestured for me to sit and got straight to business. I followed your case. The way you gathered evidence against your fiancé was impressive. Methodical, patient, strategic. Those are qualities I look for in an investigator. I hadn't expected this. Sylvia explained that her firm specialized in insurance fraud and needed investigators who understood how desperate people operate. My experience made me uniquely qualified. She offered me a job on the spot as a junior investigator. The salary was more than I'd made at my old job. I accepted before she could change her mind. The work turned out to be perfect for me. I investigated suspicious insurance claims, interviewed witnesses, gathered evidence. Everything I'd done to expose Vanessa, but now I was doing it legally and getting paid. My limp didn't matter because most of the work involved computer research and phone calls. Over the next year, I helped the firm expose 6 major fraud schemes. I had an instinct for spotting inconsistencies in stories. I knew how liars operated because I'd been engaged to one. Sylvia promoted me to senior investigator after 18 months. I trained new hires on investigative techniques. My life had rebuilt itself in ways I never anticipated. 3 years after the accident, I testified at a hearing for Vanessa's parole consideration. She'd served only 3 years of her 25-year sentence, and her lawyers argued she deserved early release for good behavior. I sat across from Vanessa in that hearing room and barely recognized her. Prison had aged her. Gray streaks in her hair, deep lines around her eyes. The confident woman I'd known was gone. She apologized to me through tears that seemed more genuine than the fake ones she'd cried in our apartment. She talked about therapy and finding religion and becoming a better person. I didn't believe any of it. When the parole board asked for my input, I kept it simple. Vanessa didn't just try to steal my money or my life. She tried to steal my future. Every step I take with this limp reminds me that she paid someone to run me down in the street like an animal. She laughed about waiting for me to die. I don't think 3 years of good behavior erases that. The parole board denied her request. She'd serve at least another 7 years before her next hearing. Walking out of that building, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired of carrying anger around like a weight. That evening, I met Quinn for dinner at a restaurant downtown. He'd flown out for the hearing to support me. We talked about everything except Vanessa. He told me about his new girlfriend, about work problems, about our dead parents and how they'd be proud of how I'd rebuilt my life. Quinn asked if I'd forgiven Vanessa. I said I didn't know how to forgive someone who'd tried to murder me. He understood that, but he also pointed out that I'd spent 3 years defining myself by what she'd done to me. Maybe it was time to define myself by what came after. I thought about that for a long time. What came after was a career I loved, financial stability, genuine friends who weren't trying to kill me for money, a life that was entirely mine. The accident had broken my body, but forced me to rebuild everything else better than it was before. 6 months after the parole hearing, I met someone, Iris, the private investigator Quinn had originally hired. She'd moved to a different city, but came back to consult on a case Sylvia's firm was handling. We got coffee to discuss old times and ended up talking for 4 hours. She knew everything about what happened with Vanessa because she'd investigated it. There were no secrets to hide or explain. She'd seen me at my lowest point and chosen to have coffee with me anyway. We started dating long distance and she eventually moved back to be closer. A year later, I proposed. Nothing fancy. Just the 2 of us in my apartment with her dog trying to steal the ring box. She said yes. We got married at a courthouse with Quinn and Sylvia as witnesses. No big ceremony, no elaborate planning, no stress. Just 2 people who'd both seen the worst of humanity through our work and chosen to build something better together. The limp never went away. It got worse in cold weather and after long days on my feet. I'd never run again, never play the sports I'd enjoyed in my 20s, never move through the world without people noticing something was wrong with my gait. But none of that mattered anymore. 5 years after a woman I loved tried to have me killed, I was happier than I'd ever been. I had work that mattered, a wife who knew exactly who I was, and a brother who called every Sunday without fail. The accident that was supposed to end my life had actually given me a better one. Vanessa had stolen my money, my health, my ability to trust easily, but she'd accidentally given me something more valuable. She'd shown me exactly what I didn't want my life to be. Everything I built afterward was in direct opposition to the person she was. Every honest relationship, every case I solved exposing fraud, every morning I woke up next to Iris knowing I was safe. Vanessa was still in prison and would be for years. Cole had been released after serving his full sentence and disappeared somewhere out of state. Dennis had gotten out after 4 years, and I'd heard he'd moved back in with his mother. Their lives had been destroyed by greed and poor choices. Mine had been rebuilt by survival and patience. Standing in my office 7 years after the accident, looking at photos of the fraud schemes we'd exposed, I thought about that moment in the hospital when I'd heard Vanessa on the phone. I'd had 2 choices then. I could have confronted her immediately with no evidence and watched her walk away, or I could have played dead, gathered proof, and made sure justice happened. I'd chosen patience. That decision had shaped everything that came after. The phone on my desk rang and Sylvia asked me to come to her office. She had a new case, a suspicious car accident where the wife had recently taken out a large life insurance policy on her husband. The husband had survived, but claimed not to remember anything about the crash. I smiled and grabbed my notebook. I knew exactly how to handle this one. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.